Good morning and welcome. I'm the Reverend Eileen Wiviott, the senior minister of this congregation. It is good to be with you. Whether the Unitarian Church of Evanston is your spiritual home or you are seeking comfort and connection in these times, we are grateful that you are with us. We are an inclusive and welcoming community seeking truth and love and striving to nurture the human spirit for a world made whole. We are guided by our principles and values, which remind us in every moment and through every struggle that each of us matters and that we are all connected through the vast and beautiful web of existence. Together, let us remember our oneness, our kinship to one another, and may we hold one another in our heart and mind with tenderness and careful attention. There are many links to connection in the comments section below, including credits for the readings, virtual religious education, for donations, and to be added to our email newsletter list. If you're with us for the first time or just discovering UCE, we'd really love to keep in touch with you. So please fill out that form so we can get you on our email newsletter mailing list. A few announcements. We hope that you'll join our Wednesdays on the Lawn hosted by the Faith Formation Force. This past week was a great experience with music and dancing and drumming. This week we'll focus on Earth as our beloved garden. Come at 5:30 with your picnic dinner, chairs or blankets if you'd like, and your open heart. This is an event for all ages, so please join us. I want to let you know that we'll be returning to our sanctuary September 12th, and we'll be embracing a multi-platform model. So this live stream will continue, but those that are ready to return to in-person gatherings, we'll be doing that on September 12th at 10:15. Note the time change. This will be our in-gathering service and our water communion. Look for more information. There'll be lots of details coming in the newsletter and on our website. After the service today, we'll hold a virtual coffee and conversation time until about 1 o'clock on Zoom. You can find the link in the comments section below or from our newsletter. Today, I want to welcome Reverend Darrick Jackson to our virtual pulpit. He is the Director of Ministries for Lifelong Learning of the UU Ministers Association and an affiliated community minister with Second Unitarian Church here in Chicago. He is one of the authors of the book, Centering, Navigating Race, Authenticity, and Power in Ministry. Darrick is active in DRUM, the UU Ministry for People of Color, and is the treasurer for Healing Moments, a ministry for caregivers of people with Alzheimer's. He's also co-associate director of the Chicago Playback Theater Ensemble and is an avid knitter. I invite you now to get your chalices ready and to set a place for yourself and your family as we join in beloved community. Welcome to worship. The Unitarian Church of Evanston sits on stolen lands, the traditional and current homelands of the Council of Three Fires, the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations. Many other tribes, such as the Miami, the Menominee, the Ho-Chunk, Sac, and Fox, have and continue to call this area home. We name these in honor and respect for the land, all of the animals and plants that have lived on and through the land, and all people who have been and remain a part of the earth. Our shared faith calls us to name these as one small effort toward greater accountability, deeper relationship, and mutuality with our ancestors and descendants.
We light this chalice in honor of stories. Old stories and new stories. Stories of challenge and hope. The stories that shape us and the stories that move us forward.
Please join in saying the words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Let this be a house of peace. Let this be our house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of prophecy. May vision for our children be our common theme. Let this be our house of myth and lore and legend, our trove of ancient story and cradle of our tender dreams. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be our house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be our house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be our house of peace.
Today's Time for All Ages is about being true to yourself. Sweety by Andrea Zuill. Sweety was awkward, even for a naked mole rat. Her own grandmother called her a little square peg. Sweety didn't exactly know what that meant, but she did know that she didn't always fit in. Sweety could be intense. Here her friends are sharing their dolls, and Sweety says, "This is warrior Princess Zorna, friend of the friendless, destroyer of evil, lover of chocolate beet cake with cream cheese frosting. Her favorite color is aubergine, and my mom made her for me." And people found her hobbies a bit bizarre. Sweety's asking, "Would you like to come over to my house and help me identify fungi?" "No, thank you." Occasionally, Sweety did things that others had a hard time comprehending, like the day she gave her book report through interpretive dance. "What book is this?" There were times when Sweety wondered what it would be like to be someone else. Someone like Deb. Deb always said the right thing and had stylish friends. Best of all, she had beautiful hair. Sweety wanted hair like Deb's. She thought maybe she should try a wig. Feels itchy. There were times when Sweety just felt like being Sweety. The best days were when Aunt Ruth visited. Aunt Ruth understood Sweety perfectly. She didn't think Sweety's hobbies were weird. Really, not a single one. Sweety and her aunt loved going through old family photo albums. Sweety especially liked the pictures of her mom and her aunt when they were her age. On her most recent visit, Aunt Ruth talked about how she was called a square peg when she was young. Sweety was starting to understand what that meant. Aunt Ruth said that being different was one of the best things about her life, and that if you stayed true to yourself, you'd find your people. That made Sweety think. Were there really people out there for her? How would they recognize her? And how would she recognize them? Was there a secret handshake she'd have to learn? She really hoped there was a secret handshake. Sweety wondered how many times she'd been close to one of her people and not known it. What if she stepped it up a notch? Would her people be able to spot her more easily? And Sweety is screaming, "My name is Sweety. I like dancing, mushrooms, and rainy days. You too? Need to find your people? Maybe we're a match. Flyers available." Or would she just seem desperate? For now, she'd trust Aunt Ruth, continue to do her favorite things and be herself. And maybe she'd try a couple of new hobbies just for fun. After all, being Sweety wasn't so bad. They're beautiful. In fact, it could be pretty awesome. And who knew when someone else pretty awesome might come along? Here's someone visiting Sweety on the bench. Oh my gosh, isn't that the cutest caterpillar? My name is Sandy. Your shirt is wonderful. I wouldn't mind having a shirt with a mushroom on it. I love mushrooms. My favorite is Gyromina esculenta. It looks like a brain. Hi, Sandy. My name's Sweety. Would you like to learn a secret handshake? Yes, thank you. I think Sweety found one of her people. So stay true to yourself and find yours. The end.
Thank you for sharing that sweet story, Kathy. These are some of the joys and sorrows that have been shared this morning in our chat. Nobody had filled out any joys and sorrows on our Google form, but just so you know that that form remains on our website for you to share your joys and sorrows. One that was shared earlier was from Brennan Baker and Brianna Rotter. They ask that we keep Bree's family in our thoughts and prayers. Mental illness is a very hard thing to live with. And Brennan is also facing surgery again on the 22nd of July. We hold you in our hearts and prayers. And Janelle Britton asked for our thoughts and prayers about her brother as he's back in the hospital. And Janelle is very much hoping that he'll be feeling better and able to attend Michael's celebration of life this Saturday. We know that these are not the only joys and sorrows that live in and among this beloved community. We know that there are many, many things on your hearts and minds. So we take this time to hold those together, all those things that have been spoken and unspoken. And if there's anything that you would like to add to the chat at this time, we'll take a few minutes to read through those and lift each other's concerns in our hearts. Let's take a moment of quiet together. As we hold these joys and sorrows, and share our celebrations and lessen the burden of our shared grief. I invite you to join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. This prayer is written by the Reverend Tamara Labak, the former associate minister at All Souls Unitarian Church in Tulsa. Holy One, who has given us the breath of life, today we remember to breathe deeply, to rest, to take in, to pause before we act, and then to take in another deep breath, poised on the edge, and risk jumping in, risk taking action, risk speaking up, risk using the gifts we have been given so that at the end of our life, we can say with absolute clarity that no part of our existence was wasted in fear of failure or fear of success. Hold us. Prepare us the way to begin to offer the gift of our awakened presence, full of love and light today. These and the prayers of our hearts we lift up now in the silence. Amen.
Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
Our reading this morning is The Stories We Tell by Chris Bateman. Our lives are shaped and guided by the stories we tell about ourselves. There are the stories you tell about yourself, your self-image, which dictate what you can bring yourself to do or attempt. There are the stories you tell about others, innocent gossip, news and chatter, or pernicious slander, prejudice and defamation. There are stories we tell of the interpretation of observations, which go by the misleading terms of facts and knowledge. And stories we tell of what cannot be observed or tested ineffable beliefs, which philosophers term metaphysics. The metaphysical stories that we tell lie at the heart of who we are, both as individuals and as cultures. It is easy to make the mistake of believing you don't tell such stories, that they are a thing of the past, and anyone who believes in untestable stories is somehow deficient. But even this is a metaphysical story that distorts our perspective. If we are to mock those who have a faith in an immortal afterlife, or who believe in the power of a transcendent force to save us? Must we not also mock those who have faith in science to grant them immortality, or who believe that technological progress will save us, even while our environment rots under the resource gluttony facilitated by the equipment we have already engineered? The thing with glass houses is that they are hard to see, especially when you are focused upon hefting your stones. There is a malicious tendency that all humans possess to some degree, which fools us into believing that the way to solve problems is to convince other people that their stories are wrong and our stories are right. But changing the stories we tell about ourselves transpires to be exceedingly difficult, except when a crisis awakens that potential within us. Effort exhausted on attempts at conversion, no matter the stories being sold, are counterproductive. They hurt the reputation of whichever culture the stories being forced upon others belong to, regardless of whether that culture is a traditional religion or a progressive liberalism. Once we accept freedom of belief, the right of each and every one of us to be the sole determinant of which stories we tell, the problems facing the world become very different. The crises become far more tractable than if we insist on believing the demon that whispers, "Everything will be better when everyone tells the same stories as you." Then the challenge becomes finding those stories that are compatible with the tales people already tell about themselves, those which allow us to agree upon the problems that need addressing, and thus apply solutions. The stories we tell are fundamental to who we are, but they are also elemental to what we can achieve. One story, told in an appropriate fashion and couched in language viable to its audience, can change the world. Indeed, there are many such stories which have already changed the world. Zarathustra or Plato's stories of good and evil as absolutes. Buddha or Jesus' stories of universal love. Darwin's stories of descent with modification. Nietzsche and Kierkegaard's stories of reality as interpretation. Einstein's stories of relativity. The question we face in trying to get to grips with our existence appears to us all too often as, which stories are true? Yet, truth in this sense means little more than assessing compatibility with the stories you have already accepted. Instead, I suggest the question, which stories shall we tell?
As we say in our covenant each Sunday, service is our law. UCE is called by our mission, our values and principles to contribute to our community, to form accountable partnerships, and express gratitude through giving. Each week, we share half of what is collected through our offering with an organization chosen by the Social Justice Council from your nominations. The council is still accepting nomination forms, which you can find on our website under social justice. Today's offering will be shared with Asada's Daughters, which is a Black, woman-led, young person-directed organization rooted in the Black radical tradition, aiming to deepen, escalate, and sustain the movement for Black liberation. They provide a lifeline of practical aid and moral support for youth facing over-policed, violent neighborhoods. Please give as generously as you are able, and may what you give bring you joy. You can text to give, send in a check, or give from our website. If you do send in a check, make sure you indicate in the memo line the purpose of your offering. The morning's offering will now be received.
Once upon a time, a long time ago, in the beginning. So what happened was, these are all beginnings of a story. All words that, when brought together, signify that it is time to listen and take in what is being said next. The beginnings of a journey. Now, what is a story? A simple way of thinking of a story is events linked in a sequence across time according to a plot. So basically, a story is the meaning that has been made by taking different things that have happened together. And that creates a story. And stories are something that is so much a part of our lives. We are, from a very young age, are told stories, whether the stories are told at bedtime, or we are told stories on TV, on PBS, or we are listening to stories being shared between people. Stories are constantly being shared and offered, and so we are surrounded by stories. And those stories help us understand ourselves and understand the world that we are living in. Some of the stories are also ones that are given to us or told about us. So they may not be the stories that we would share, or our engagement is the stories that people have said, oh, this is your story. And we have to navigate what that means, what that story tells us. Because when you change the story, then you change your understanding of what those events mean. And so we can redefine ourselves if we change the stories that we share. And this is a key component of the field of narrative therapy, which asks you to look at the different stories that you tell. And remember, as we talked about, the stories are events linked in a sequence across time according to a plot. What if you looked at those events but changed the plot? How does that help you understand what those events mean? So you're not creating fiction. You are re-investigating the story and finding new meaning. And sometimes when you do that work, you find other events that you did not realize were there or had forgotten about, but help shape a new story. When I was young, like elementary school, I loved to sing. I sang in the children's choir at church, and I loved singing in choirs that came up, or opportunities to sing at school. I loved singing. It was just so much a part of my experience. And then at some point in high school, actually, no, this was middle school. At some point in middle school, I stopped singing. And I don't know what exactly happened. Like, I can't pinpoint the moment where the shift happened. But my memory is that I couldn't sing. You know, it must have been my voice changing and trying to understand that, and no one supporting that, my understanding. I'm pretty sure that had to be what it was, but I don't remember a moment or an instance where someone said something. I just know that my narrative changed for me to say that I don't sing. And so I stopped singing. Well, I stopped singing in public. I still love to sing, and there were many times that I would be at home in my room singing to songs on the radio, or to one of my CDs. So I did enjoy singing, but not to a place where I would do it publicly. Like singing in a choir was not, and I would tell people, "Oh, I can't sing," and that maintained for quite a while, until several years after college. Um, and I remember I was at a concert for the Boston Rainbow Gospel Choir, and I remember listening to them perform, and gospel music is always something that has resonated with me, and I just loved the music, and there was a part of me that really wanted to sing with them. At the end, they mentioned that they welcomed everyone to sing, and I was too still had that narrative that I couldn't sing, so I said I didn't join, but I kept thinking about it. So the second time I went to one of their concerts, and they said that, I said, "Well, I guess I can try." Um, and so I went and sang, and no one said anything. And in fact, someone said I had a nice voice, which wasn't something in my awareness. And so I reconnected with my ability to sing. And I realized, looking back, that in all the time that I talked about I couldn't sing, I never talked about how much I sang as a child. I didn't reconnect to that until after I reclaimed singing. And I remembered that part of the story. And so now, I sing whenever I can, and sing with choirs. And in fact, not too long after I joined the gospel choir, I had the opportunity to actually sing in a musical. And started doing musicals. I really jumped into that part of myself. But I had to reclaim it, and then evaluate the story that I told. And so the story I tell now is much different than the story I told many years ago. And as we continue to think about these stories that we tell, there are also stories that get told in community. I mean, think for a moment. What are the stories that you tell about your family, or your community, or your congregation? What types of stories are they? What are the stories that have led you to be the group of people that you are? And what stories might lead you to be the people you want to be? What stories might create the space, the opening to realize your vision of your congregation, to help be the change you want to see? I see this all the time, this sense of the stories that we tell and stories they're holding, sometimes the stories that we tell, particularly as organizations, tend to be much more aspirational than the reality. Which on the flip side, for some reason, I see that the stories that people tell are often about who they are afraid they might be, but not necessarily who they are or who they could be. And so as you think about your stories, you know, I've experienced in UU congregations this clear story of how open and welcome they are. And I've seen things written in orders of service when I've gone to visit that talk about their openness and their welcoming, which makes me feel so excited to be there that all of me will be accepted and embraced. And my experience of the congregation doesn't match that story. My experience might be that the congregation that talks about, you know, their openness might not actually talk to me because I'm new. I have been at the congregations that says, you know, take a red cup and someone will speak to you, and have sat the entire time in coffee hour with a red cup, talking to no one, except for someone that I might have known beforehand and reached out to. Or this sense of everyone is accepted, but not really. And so I think there's a tension between who we are and who we want to be. And we can tell a different story that maybe honors who we are, but can lead us towards that aspirational peace. There are also stories that are not shared. Stories that get lost in the midst of things. I've been doing my family history since the beginning of the pandemic. It was kind of my my pandemic pandemic work, and I've been doing family history before, but I just really threw myself back into it, and I've discovered so many stories that were never passed down. Stories of people who I would have loved to know about, but that stories weren't shared and connected. Stories of ancestors who were pioneers. And, you know, when I hear of the pioneering time, which has its own problematic pieces in itself, but when I hear of the people who were involved, I rarely hear of someone who was Black being involved. And yet I have stories of ancestors starting communities or being founding members of cities that I had never heard, and would be wonderful pieces of knowledge to grow up with, of engaging. And I wonder what other stories do not get told because they have been lost or erased even. They've been removed from our understandings. So I invite you to think about your stories and our collective stories as a congregation. Do we tell the stories we really want to tell? Are there stories that are missing? How can we reclaim those lost stories and live into who we want to be and who we might already be if we just understood? And so I close this part of our story together. And although I cannot guarantee a happily ever after, I do wish that for each and every one of you. Blessed be.
As we extinguish the chalice, please join in saying these words. Though the flame is extinguished, we carry with us the warmth of community, the light of truth, and the fire of commitment until we are together again.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. The needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
We are people of stories. May we tell the stories that give us purpose. May we revise the stories that limit us. and may we reclaim the stories of the lost voices. Blessed be.